All
Great.
right. Hello, everybody. My name is Vince Law. I am the program director for Product Management Studio. And we have here with us a few staff members, Jennifer Bui, as well as Ali Hess, who also work on the program. And in a second, we will be introducing Dr. Sara Beckman as well. But I wanted to introduce myself as the program director. I help run and design and also teach in this program, and you are about to see a preview of what a lesson might look like from Sara. A little bit about me. I am a faculty member here at the House School of Business at UC Berkeley, and prior to doing this, as well as the independent consulting and teaching that I do now, I led several different product management teams across various industries, including within education, gaming, as well as B2B software. So myself, as well as all the faculty member, have a lot of industry experience that we're excited to share with you. With that said, with this particular webinar, we do have Sara, who's going to be sharing some insights about some of the main frameworks for the Product Management Studio program with us. So with that said, let's move on. So this session will be recorded and it will be shared via email with you. So there's no need to worry about taking copious amounts of notes. We will have this recorded and available afterwards. So if you signed up for this program and you have signed in, you will get an email notifying you of that. Now, while we're here, we will be doing quick introduction as well as ask you a little bit of questions around why product management is important. Afterwards, we're going to get quite a deep dive into the 4 core questions that we believe product managers should be able to answer about their product. Towards the middle of the hour or so, and after that content that Sara has with us, we'll be providing you a little bit of an insight into what Product Management Studio is as a executive education program, and we'll leave some time for us to do a Q&A as well. Now, we're all probably pretty used to Zoom at this point and what some of the best practices are, but it's worth repeating sometimes that you are welcome to participate as much in any way you'd like. Within the webinar, you are free to use the chat function. You can comment in chat, you can answer questions that we post to you in chat, but you can also ask questions there. And if you are asking questions, please try to make sure that it's clear that it's a question, and we will try our best to bring it to the main session. But we might also, across all of the staff members within this webinar, might answer questions in chat as well. So there might be a lot going on. Some of us might be teaching at some times and answering questions. Somebody might be answering questions in chat, but it's all to make sure that we got all your questions covered. And so definitely keep an eye peeled on both ends of the Zoom window. Now, in terms of your conduct, we do ask that you try to create an open, safe, and inclusive environment, and just be courteous and constructive about your contribution, whatever it is that you might say in chat. And if you do run into any technical issues, do feel free to let us know in chat as well. So before I hand it off to Sara, I did want to share a little bit about her with y'all. So she earned her bachelor's, master's, and PhD at Stanford, our rival, unfortunately. But she has since found a better home with us here at Berkeley. But prior to joining the faculty here at Berkeley, she worked in change management at Hewlett Packard, operation management services at Booz Allen Hamilton, and eventually joined us here at Haas. As well as the College of Engineering, where she teaches in both places. She also serves as the faculty director for various product management programs here at Executive Education, some dating back almost 15 years now. So I oftentimes like to joke that Sara has been teaching product management earlier than most of us knew what product management was. In addition, she's worked as the Chief Learning Officer at the Design Institute here on campus at UC Berkeley, and has received not just any faculty and mentorship awards, but campus-wide faculty teaching awards, which means that she wasn't only awarded a distinction at the business school, at the engineering school, but all of UC Berkeley. So you all are in for a treat as I hand things over to Sarah.
Thank you, Vince, and welcome once again, everyone. I realize I contradicted Vince in the chat. He asked if you put a question mark in front of your questions, and I told you put an asterisk because that's what we use in another class. But if you do have questions and you would put a question mark in front of them, that will help us pull those out of the chat stream, because we're going to be asking you a bunch of, yeah, thanks, Vince. We're going to be asking you a bunch of questions that we'd like you to answer ourselves. So let me start with just getting a little bit of a sense. We're going to run a poll here, and we are curious about who you all are. So if you would answer the poll, letting us know if you are an experienced product manager, if you're a new product manager, you're an aspiring product manager, you work with product managers, and this you can answer in the poll as opposed to in the chat. That way we can add them all up as we go through it. Yeah, Manuel, and other as an entrepreneur in your case. So, but let's give you a moment to see where you're all located. Uh-oh, some here you're both. I guess if you put an E, that will capture both. Huh? Another both. Copy. And Parminder, we may get back to your question in a little bit. So let's jump in a little bit here, and then we'll get back to where you are. So it looks like this is pretty interesting. There's a pretty equal distribution here of people that are experienced, new, aspiring, and interfacing. And that's not uncommon in our classes, that we have this kind of mix. So part of the way that we target or customize the class differently to these different levels is we put you into peer coach groups. So we have exercises where you intermingle, and aspiring product managers can interact with experienced ones so they can learn from them. But we also have groups in which we put experienced people together with a particular, thanks, Manuel, an E for enthusiastic to be here. I like that. So this is a common mix, and we work hard in the program to accommodate these different levels based on who you're working with, who you're getting feedback from, et cetera. So great, thank you for answering that. And did you get to see it? There we go. Now everybody can see the answers, huh? So let me dive in a little bit here. Let me ask you the next question, and this is probably a little bit related to your comment, but the question is, as Vince suggested, when we started our product management programs at Berkeley like 15 years ago, product management wasn't quite the big deal it is today. And I'm curious what you think has caused the shift to making product management that much more important in today's world than it was, say, 15 years ago. So what's going on that is making product management so important? Yeah, Nick, I think that that the content here, we sometimes position this program, distinguish it from some of the other programs out there as more aspirational. So we take a little bit more strategic view of product management in this program, and less of a tactical view. So for example, we don't teach people how to write MRDs and PRDs and that kind of thing, but really we try to get them to think in a different way. And so in that sense, it works, Nick, for both people who are managing PMs, but then also for developing the PMs that are coming along behind you, if you will. So Chris says that the competitive environment has changed, that we have shortened timelines for the products that we're developing. Feels a lot more like survival of the fittest, that we have more products, Yvonne, more diverse products, more data available, which really changes our dynamics with our customers, improved technology, lots, Arturo, of change in the market and in user expectations, which is related to Yvonne's note about the improved technology. Increasingly, Priya, we've got to really collaborate across the functional silos in our organizations in order to create experiences for customers. So there's a role for the product managers in creating that integration across sectors. Companies, yeah. So Bidemi, there's a lot more attention being paid to customers than before, and that's part of what I'm trying to unpack here, right? Is that is a shift that's happening. There's some drivers of that shift. Lots of apps on mobile devices that are shifting technology. Users are demanding better quality. Nick, we have access to a lot more data. Balaji, there's digital transformation that's generating all kinds of change, customer expectations changing, et cetera. So exactly, I think you all have nailed in general the notion of what it is that we're trying to do as product managers. I'm going to take a little step back here. So anybody know who Keith Jarrett is? Any Keith Jarrett fans? You were listening to him when you first logged in if you came in. Yes, Arthur says. So Keith Jarrett is a jazz pianist, improvisational jazz pianist, and there's a great story about his most popular album, the Cologne Concert album, came about because there was a young woman in Cologne, Germany, who really wanted to bring more jazz music to her town. And so she convinced the local opera house to let her run a concert there. I think it was like at 11 o'clock at night or something like that, after the opera was finished. She sold these tickets to a bunch of people. So she convinced not only the opera house to let her run this, but the local community to attend. And she convinced Keith Jarrett to come. So Keith Jarrett showed up, and she took him into the opera house and showed him the piano. He had requested a particular type of piano, and she got that brand. The brand name was on the piano, but it turns out that the piano was badly, not just out of tune, but kind of a mess, as described here. It was like half a piano. The keys were sticking, the pedals didn't work, the felt was worn away in the upper register. And Keith Jarrett, first he said, I can't, I'm not going to play, I'm not going to do this, and started to walk out. And this young woman ran after him and said, come have dinner. And eventually she talked him into staying. And meanwhile, they tried to get somebody to do the best they could to fix this piano, but it was not repairable in the time that they had. And so Keith Jarrett sat down at this piano and he played a concert, and he had to improvise not only in his usual way, but around all the parts of the piano that were not working. And they almost didn't record this because his manager said, this won't be worth anything. But in the end, they said, well, we have all the people here, we'll record it. And they recorded it, and it ultimately was released. And Arthur will be able to tell you it was Keith Jarrett's perhaps best known work. And so I love this story as a metaphor for where we've been. It seems like as this drags on, we're learning to play the piano, but we really got thrown a curveball with the COVID virus a year and a half ago. And I think more than ever, we need product managers to play this critical role of improvising in all of our industries in response to the hugely changed dynamics of how we live, how we work, how we learn. And so we don't even know if it's a piano, right? I love that, that Manuel, yeah. Are we even playing a piano, or is it the rest of the orchestra that we're trying to figure out? So for me, this was a very useful metaphor because it made me feel more hopeful about the challenges that we're in. And so what I argue is that even before COVID, customer and user experience design was absolutely critical, but it's changing way more rapidly than we could ever have imagined. And so I love this picture of the Uber driver improvising as the days go by in ways that he felt like he could attract customers to ride with him. So understanding customer and user experiences is more important than it ever was. And technology was already kind of making things challenging. And so the way I like to think about the technology implications is that they're causing us to have to redesign entire systems. So when you think about an autonomous vehicle, self-driving car, what kinds of changes do you think about? How is it affecting our lives, our worlds? Nick, exactly. We're increasingly faced. We've got to be solving problems and driving impact, not just launching features. So, what are your thoughts on what are the impacts of autonomous vehicles or self-driving cars? So, reduce pollution. Cross our fingers. Hope that's the case. With California burning up right now, I'd love that we do something about climate change, right? Safety, hopefully, Vasu, it will have improved safety, fewer accidents. Although somebody once said, if we have fewer accidents, there will be fewer organ donations. And then what will we do? So, the systems effect can be used. Save time, reduce accident safety, impact on manual labor. So all the people who drive cars now, maybe we'll have to find other jobs. So thinking about retraining. Absolutely, Balaji, I would love to not spend 2 hours commuting to and from Berkeley. I'd love to have that time back. Santiago, there's an assumption here that maybe I won't own my own car, implication. So maybe I can have a smaller house without a garage. I free up a lot of parking spaces in cities like San Francisco that I could turn into to something else. Autonomous quality of life could change, right? Because now I'm not spending so much time in my cars. Santiago, very interesting, right? Who do I insure? What do I insure? Nimish, there's different kinds of traffic patterns. So do I have stoplights anymore? Do the cars just talk to each other and negotiate the intersections? Do roundabouts become more, you've never almost gotten into more accidents, Christina? Oof. That doesn't sound promising. So Luis, yeah, city development, different models for using vehicles, because cars only use 2% of the time. So here's the point, is that there are massive systems implications of these technologies that we're developing. So it goes back to this other problem of thinking at a bigger level. If we just shove products, features, technologies out the door, there's lots of implications for the world, and we have to start thinking about what those implications are. So here's another, we're redesigning body parts, replacing all kinds of parts of ourselves with artificial limbs and such. And so there are people who do research on aging, and they're saying that there's somebody alive today who will live to be 150 years old. That doesn't seem so much of a stretch. I think 128 has been the oldest person so far. But then they say within 20 years, we'll enable people to live to be 1,000 years old. So I'm wondering what you think the implications are of that. By the way, some of you may be saying, oh, I hope it's not me, because you're imagining aging at the same rate that we age today. But even if you back this off to 200, like what are the implications of living to be? So clearly there's huge population explosion, right? And Shannon, not all innovations are positive. That's one way to look at it. Healthcare costs, what will they look like as we, yeah, Chris, so the differentiation between rich people who can afford to get all their body parts replaced, as opposed to the people who are not, yeah, like, oh, California, so many challenges. Food shortages, so how do we feed a population of that size? And there's also just, yeah, how do I think about this, Stephanie? So how do I think about, do I say I do forever for the rest of my life? Do I stay married for 100 and some odd years to the same person? Do I have kids once every 2 years or whatever the current rhythm is, or do I have a kid every 20 years? What is my career? I could have multiple careers, which is kind of cool, huh, Shannon? Do I retire at 65? And if so, what do I do with the other 135 years? Or do I ever retire, Kalyani? What are Roth IRAs all about? So these are the kinds of questions that, this is a pretty meta picture, but I think in the end, what we really think about here is that product managers are increasingly critical as we are more and more taking on the design of systems of the future and accommodating both technology and people. And so we've got to have people that sit at that intersection and say, yes, these are all cool technologies, but, and I think, again, back to Nick's problem, what is the problem we're solving for whom? And what does that look like in this broader systems environment? And I think you can think of a lot of examples. The Wall Street Journal is taking Facebook apart right now. What are the implications of having started this social media network, and how do we manage the flow of information in ways that we create maybe fewer arguments and challenges for people? So lots of challenges. In fact, any Black Mirror fans out there? Yeah, how do I think about a product when it's at an embryonic stage, and how do I really think about what's going to happen? Exactly, Christina, Web 3.0. What's Black Mirror about? I see some Black Mirror fans here. It's a sort of dystopian view of the future, particularly around technology. So some of them I have to confess I watch and I still don't understand, but one that I really did understand was everybody rates everyone else after every interaction. And then that's what's in this picture. And then those ratings get used to decide like what rental car line you'll get in, or what access you'll have to resources in that world. So the question that I sort of pose here is, what kind of future are we aiming to create? And then ultimately, what is the role of product managers in helping organizations think about those kinds of things? Exactly, Vincent. Some of this is happening already. So I'm going to bring this down to earth now at some level, but I think it's really important for us to put customers and users at the center of these conversations. And we spend some amount of time doing that in class to really think about what are the customer users' jobs to be done, and how are we using that understanding to frame what it is that our product, service, offering, whatever you want to call it, is serving. So I'm going to introduce one of the fundamental tools that we use in the class, and I'm going to walk through it through an example with you. So we organized the class around what we call a product management canvas. And those of you who know the business model canvas will recognize these elements as also being elements on on that canvas. And the nice part about that canvas is that was actually, although they don't really talk about this, it was Alexander Osterwalder's PhD thesis. And he created the business model canvas by really understanding the literature on business model design and what the core elements of business model design are. And so what we've done is to put them into what we think about as 4 core questions that a product manager needs to be able to answer. And Manuel, jobs to be done is certainly a part of this first box. Right, Christina, I think this is really interesting, a quick aside, but the notion that there's a chief executive of customer experience, I spend a lot of time, we have another class called Customer Obsessed Design, in which we talk about the transition from being product-centric organizations to being customer-centric organizations. And that's only going to happen, Christina, with those kinds of changes ultimately, in my opinion. Somebody has to own the customer experience so that that can be used to drive the activities of the organization more broadly. And that manual will be done around these jobs to be done canvas. And I'm going to get Arturo to that in a moment. So I want to start with the first question is, I don't think there's a way for me to expand. I'm fully in present mode. Sorry about that. Does it look only 50% to you, Vince? I'm trying to read lips, Vince, but it's not working.
Sorry, I thought I had muted. I think the black bars on either side of the screen is forcing the window to look a little funny. But there are Zoom options within Zoom, ironically. You can make the screen share a little bit larger by going to view options where it says you're viewing Dr. Sara Beckman's screen. On the side of that at the top, it says view options, and you should be able to choose a bigger zoom in that. So if you go even 50%, you should be able to see quite a bit of that.
Yeah, I don't have a center bar. I don't have a middle line on my screen. So
yeah,
all the suggestions here, I can't do anything about. But if that helps you to be able to see it, that's great. Thank you, Vince, and others for. So the first core question that we suggest product managers be able to answer, and I think of this as the anchor question, is what value is my organization providing for whom? So we spend time in the class both on customer segmentation, how do you figure out who you want to serve, and the companion question of what value do you want to provide to each of those segments. And so you can think about this as understanding jobs to be done, understanding the outcomes that the customer segment wants to achieve, et cetera. So we spend a reasonable amount of time on these questions because we believe that this is really the anchor for this campus. You've got to know who you're serving and what value you aim to provide to them. Note that value is not a list of features and functions. It's the jobs that the customer wants to do that you are enabling. So that's the first core question. The second core question really relates to what people, I think still call, but used to call core competences. And that is, how am I literally going to build the value that I want to build for my customers? So I may choose to build some of that internally. So those are what key activities you do internally. You write code, you manufacture sensors, right? Those are key activities that you could do internally. And you might say, there's some things that I don't want to do myself, but I'm going to form partnerships in order to get that piece of the activity done. So maybe I run a train service, but the ticketing work I outsource to an agency that manages ticketing. So that's really about What am I going to consider my core competences, my core capabilities? What am I going to partner to get so that collectively I can build the value that I want to build for my customer? Then the third question becomes, how do I actually get that value in my customer's hands? And this is really ultimately channel strategy. So there are 5 functions of a channel. One is to raise awareness of your offering. The second is to help customers evaluate those offerings. The third is to facilitate purchase of the offerings. Fourth is to actually deliver the customer experience. And then fifth is to provide some sort of post-purchase support. So we'll talk a little bit in the class about channel strategy. Many of you probably work for large organizations, and you may have a whole lot of channels available to you, in which case the question then becomes, which of those available channels are you going to use for which of these functions? So now I know what I'm going to, what value I want to build for whom, how I'm going to actually build it, how I'm going to get it in their hands. The bottom box then says, how do I capture value once I've done those other 3 things? And this really comes down to identifying revenue sources and pricing strategies. So we have an entire half day on pricing strategy. We know that many product managers don't own pricing, but it's really critical that your pricing strategy align with your value prop. And so there has to be connection between the definition of the value that you're providing to whom and how you're choosing to get revenue or extract revenue from the people that you're serving. And of course, the difference between revenue and cost is profit. The cost structure is largely driven by that center box, because that's where you spend the bulk of your money, is building that value for the customer. So that's what the product management canvas is about, and that kind of outlines a lot of the fundamental work that we do in the class. So I want to let you play with this for a few minutes. You all know what Slack is. Some of you probably use it. So Slack is, Parag says, yep, Swati, Mike, lots of yeses here. Yep, using Slack in the office. So for those of you who don't know, Slack is, as it says here, a collaboration hub. So you can maintain a bunch of different channels for communications, and it keeps things organized in a way that a whole team can check into it and really manage their workflow. Shraddha. Okay, well, you're gonna have to watch and you see how much people understand or not about Slack, and then you can jump in here and help us with some of the answers here. So I'm going to start, and maybe Shraddha, you'll correct people after they've put things in here, and that way you can see what's going on. But is there a question? Somebody had a raised hand. Can you put a question in the chat, Marina? We'd be happy to share. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm going to talk about that at the end. So if you're at Salesforce, we'll talk about the other end of this conversation. So let me ask you, who are Slack's customers? So throw in the chat, who are Slack's customers? So organizations, what kind of organizations? Purnima says, I am. So what are you? So Apple as a company, for example, might be a Slack customer. So corporations like Apple, large corporations. Information technology people in the organization, those are probably the people who do the purchasing, right? Shivam. Employees, Priya, are the users. So we've got this kind of, this is a B2B product in those cases, right? Where IT people, enterprise people are buying it, but the employees are using it. And then Shu says university students. So there's also a version of Slack that startups, small companies, universities, projects, right, can use it. So yeah, so yeah, good point, Luis. Some of you are answering hosts and panelists, and if you would change your thing to say everyone, then everyone will be able to see. And if you have a question that's specific to the hosts and panelists, then you can click on hosts and panelists. But if you do everyone, then everyone will get to see. So we've got sort of large companies, and then maybe smaller organizations or smaller teams of people that use this. So what is the value that Slack provides to those large enterprise? Vincent, yeah, Microsoft Teams people might not like to see that question. There we go. Luis says, I'm not. So saving on email. So I manage my communications, Priya, in a different way. Much easier communication, better flow of information, or more efficient flow of information, right, Abhishek? Yeah, you can put customers in there if you want to, Manuel. So common, easy platform to collaborate so you can get the desired tasks accomplished. And Nimish, this is starting to sound like a value proposition. Arthur, I'll leave that alone. We won't have an argument about Teams, but we can come back to that a little bit later. So yeah, so manages communication in a quick way when you can't be co-located. So when I looked up Slack, and this is before the acquisition, so Shadra, you can chime in here if you like, but it looked like there were really kind of two fundamental customers. They target both large corporations, and they argue there's some value prop there in creating some level of compliance while coordinating thousands of workers. Whereas for startup companies, it seemed to focus more on saving time by removing communication silos. And some of the stuff that it says, all your tools in one place, be more productive at work with less. So these are some of the taglines that you see, right? Developers could be a target user, certainly, I suppose, Shadra. Yeah. So yeah, Abhishek, this is kind of an interesting business in that you could argue they really have a B2B and a B2C arm. And I haven't played that out as much here, but like I use Slack a lot with my project teams, and that is not a B2B transaction, right? So Shadra, nice, thank you. Automating workflows. So I'm going to make these two segments, two different colors, and you'll see that play through as we play through the canvas. So now I'm going to ask the question. We know what value we're creating for whom. Now I want to know, what do you think Slack is doing? What activities is Slack engaged in? So if you were to look inside the company, what do you think they're doing in order to create value for their customers? What are the key things they're investing in? So Mike, they're going to be doing project management, right? They'll be doing user research, Monique. Abhishek, they'll have to do product design, right? They're doing integrations, Hillary. So now I've got external partnerships as well as internal partnerships, right? Kathy and Hillary, there's certainly, so those are all partnerships that they're leveraging. So they've got they must have investments in UI, UX. They're obviously writing code, which is perhaps one of the more fundamental things that they're doing, right? So they're creating these easy to use products by building this platform that facilitates communication, and then integrating tools from partners, right? They have lots of partnerships, which I've captured here in just a screenshot from somewhere else on the web, right? So the key activities: build a platform that facilitates communication, integrate tools. You guys have named a whole bunch of the resources that they need in order to do that. They've got to pay software architects, coders, UI, UX designers, et cetera, right? So those are some core activities. And notice that I've made them gray because arguably those activities support both the blue and the gold customers on here. And Shraddha, again, you can jump in if I've missed some core activity that should be here. So then, through what channels are they enabling customer awareness, evaluation, purchase, delivery, and support? Let's start with, well, tell me what channels they're connecting with their customers with. So they use LinkedIn. So in general, they're going to use social media. Monique says they're using word of mouth. They are using, Aishwarya is saying poll bots. Other ways that you think they're connecting with customers? Press releases, free trials, reviews, a viral model, analytics. They have a Salesforce, right, Nick? Digital marketing and a Salesforce. Conferences, surveys, focus groups, right? So all kinds of ways. Some of these are ways that they're collecting information about their customers. I'm really more interested in the channels through which they're doing these other activities. But clearly there are a lot of channels, and I've pulled them out. And again, Shraddha can correct us. I did all this from just web research, but they're targeting some amount of their work at the large corporations, right? So they're more likely to have direct sales to those larger corporations, maybe conferences that they interact with those organizations, press releases to those organizations. Whereas the word of mouth, web, social media, podcast stuff will certainly affect both the gold and the blue. So again, I'm just making the point here that as we think about the different segments, we might think about the differences in our business model that are associated with those different segments. So then we get to the last question, and that is really the core question here is, how are they charging people for the product? So I'm focused on not just what customers are willing to pay, but really how do they want to pay? So what's the model? Per user, they have a freemium model, right, Hillary, which is really probably targeted at those more B2C type of people. They have a per user licensing cost, try and buy. They make service revenue, which I haven't included here. A subscription per user, right? One of the things I loved when I looked up some of this stuff is that they have very tangible connection of the value they're providing customers in their descriptions of the product and service. So 21% faster response time to sales leads. A common fiber in the segments and build around that functionality, pricing, messaging. So they don't sell features, they sell organizational transformation. So you get this very clear statement of value that they're providing to customers, which they then get in this freemium and pay per active user. And those sort of apply, well, probably freemium applies more to the lower end, and pay per active user. Shraddha, you could again jump in there. And then the cost structure is driven by the activities in creating value. So let me ask one more question here before I turn it back to Vince to walk us through the program characteristics. So as you know, yeah. Oh, interesting. I'm reading Arthur's comment. Salesforce has acquired Slack. Any thoughts as to what you think might change in this business model? Level of support for the customer, is that what you mean, Priya? Archana, we'll talk about product metrics in the class. They show up here largely in a description of the value added to the customer. Yeah, so it'll get bundled differently, come in a different kind of package. They might have a more aggressive strategy towards B2B and beef up some of those B2B channels. They might work more on enterprise level features and therefore create a different value prop for those more bugs. Create a stronger or a deeper value prop, particularly for those B2B customers. They might do some more customization. Right, Kathy, the question of what does that integration look like? Uh-oh, you compete with Salesforce, so you'll stop using Slack. So there you go. For both the Salesforce and the Slack people here, there are some thoughts as to what's going to happen. So the product management canvas really becomes the core framework for what we offer in this class. And then what we do is, because the product management canvas itself doesn't bring alive sort of the emotional context of the customers. So we have a storytelling wrapper that we put around it. So you learn storytelling. Once upon a time, there was a customer who really wanted to and couldn't do so because. So we think of that as the sad story that you use to bring alive the emotional connection to a customer. And then they heard about, through Channel X, our product and associated value proposition. The product works in the following 3 ways, which leverages our core competences, unlike the competition, and in fact, the other ways of solving that problem. So the story is a way of bringing together the elements of the product management canvas. It's also critically important, for getting funding. So we have the person who teaches storytelling for us, works with a lot of entrepreneurs to help them fine-tune their stories. And it also helps you internally just to get your team all on the same page. So we use the storytelling wrapper around this canvas, and then we underpin all of that with these basic innovation capabilities. So we talk about empathy for the customer. We talk about both data-driven and qualitative customer research. We talk about framing and reframing the customer's problem to be solved. We talk about generating ideas for different ways of providing experiences for the customers, and then engaging in experimentation and rapid prototyping in order to test those ideas. And then finally, we spend a fair amount of time on things like negotiations, managing teams when they don't all report to you. So how do you implement all of the other stuff that we've been talking about, mobilizing and executing the organization? Talk about portfolio planning and product lifecycle and those kinds of constructs, as well as a way of bringing things together. So I'm going to turn it back to Vince at this point. That sort of pulls together what we do in the class. Thank you for your very active engagement in the chat. That makes it fun for all of us. It's also the way we run the class, is to really have active interaction and active engagement. So the live sessions will have that element to them as well. But Vince, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for the great session. And like Sarah says, thank you for your participation. You have just gotten a preview of what a live session might look like within the Product Management Studio program. Like Sarah says, this is not an online program where you go and watch a bunch of videos on your own. It's self-paced. This is actually very intensive, very interactive, and it's meant to be a more similar experience to in-person learning, right? So it's not just being in a vacuum by yourself. So if you don't mind going to the next slide, Sarah. So the way we like to construct and talk about the program is that the various components include community, which is you all learning and speaking with each other. There are a lot of discussions and a lot of team activities associated with the program that's all baked in and designed. There's also content application. We don't just ask you to watch videos. There are assignments and different things that asks you to actually apply whatever you've learned to your day-to-day work. At the very beginning of the program, we actually ask you to pick a product for which you will apply all the different frameworks towards. If you work as a product manager right now, you would just use the product that you use at work. If you don't have a product from work that you can apply, you can either choose your favorite product or think of an entrepreneurial idea that you might want to be thinking through leveraging the frameworks of this program. In addition to the community and the application, we also have coaches. So we have a whole team of coaches who are regularly staffed onto the program. Whenever the program starts, every participant who's in the program will be assigned to a coach. There's about upwards to around 10 participants per coach. And the coach becomes your first touch point and your Sherpa. There are not only experts in product management, but there are also experts in the content. And I'll speak about the coaches a little bit further in a second. Next slide. So some of you might be wondering, what does this structure of the program looks like? A lot of it is actually surrounding getting deeper into each of the 4 core questions. So the 8 weeks is actually a little bit closer to 9.5 and 10 calendar weeks. At the beginning of the program, the next one being at Monday, October 4th. That's the start of week 0, which is preparations and introductions. And then we'll spend the first couple of weeks going over the higher level frameworks. So the same way that Sarah's talked about the product management canvas, we'll get deeper into that in week 1 and then more into storytelling in week 2. And then the subsequent weeks is a deep dive into each of the 4 core questions. Week 3 and 4 are both dedicated to what value are we providing for whom. Week 5 is about creating and delivering value, and then week 6 is about capturing value, which is strictly around pricing and pricing strategy. There is a break week baked in between week 6 and 7, but coming back to the program after the break week, we will be sharing content around mobilizing and executing, both in terms of managing your cross-functional team, as well as managing your stakeholders. And we wrap up the entire program with a revisit of storytelling, which is going to be accumulation of all the different customer-centric considerations that you have learned throughout the program. So with that regard, a lot of folks may wonder, what does the week over week look like and how much work will I have to do? Well, we estimate usually around 5 hours per week. We'll say that, I'll be honest in saying that the first week is the heaviest and then becomes lighter after that. So it might be slightly more than 5 hours per week at the onset, but then taper off a little bit towards the middle and the end of the program. A little bit over half of that time, you'll be working on self-paced content. So you will have videos that you'll watch, you'll have readings, there are assignments that you have to do on your own time, and there are discussions that you can participate. But every single one of the 8 weeks, or 9 weeks, I should say, including week 0, there is live sessions, and those come in 2 flavors. The faculty live sessions is exactly how you've just experienced it with Sarah, except that everyone can actually unmute and interact and contribute. We get a lot of volunteers to tell their story, share their product management canvases with us as a way of co-learning with each other. So the faculty live sessions make up about half of those live sessions, but the other half of the weeks, you're actually getting together with just your coach and your team. So anywhere between 8 to 12 people in a Zoom, where you're doing more interactive work than just sharing different stories here and there and just volunteering. There will be activities designed specifically for you to get into breakouts with each other and to give feedback to each other and to practice some of these frameworks with each other as well. Regardless of which format of the live session it is, they usually typically happen on Thursdays. With the faculty live sessions, they happen at 8 a.m. on Pacific time and 6 p.m. Pacific time. So that should accommodate for most anybody in any time zone around the world. We do get a good contingent of folks coming from APAC, EMEA, as well as other parts of the world beyond that. So as far as faculties go, you've just met Sarah and you've just met me, which bookends the two sort of photos at the very end. But we have a whole host of other folks that's going to be bringing their expertise to you. Sarah already mentioned David Reamer, which is the person second from the left on the top row, who is our resident storytelling expert. We also have Keela Robeson next to David, who is a senior vice president of innovation at Netflix. And she oftentimes will share a lot of great insights around team management and cross-functional team management. And then at the end of the top row, we have David Mock, who is a pricing expert with years and years of experience pricing all sorts of different products, some of which are pretty hard to wrap your mind around, including in healthcare as well as in infrastructure. And then starting in the bottom row, we've got yet another David, David Sharon, who is an entrepreneurship faculty member here at Haas. And he'll be talking about how you might create and deliver value. And then we've got center middle, Professor Stephen Huff, who is a marketing expert that will get more deeply into segmentation and other various marketing-centric approaches. I myself will be bringing my experiences in metrics as well as road mapping and MVP development to you. Mm-hmm. So as I mentioned, every participant will be paired with a coach along with 9 other peers, and they all come from different backgrounds. We try to match folks with the right background if possible, but it's quite a puzzle, so we might not be perfect at it, but we try to match you with the right folks. They are usually experienced PMs. They will be leading each of the teams. They will be providing regular feedback on your assignments, as well as answer any questions you have. And we also bake in a one-on-one coaching session with you and your coach towards the end of the program as well. As you see, coaches come from all sorts of consumer and B2B backgrounds, as listed in the logos represented to the right. And so some of you who might be aware of what else Berkeley Executive Education might offer might have noticed that there's actually 2 different product management programs. The one that we've just shared with you here is on the left, Product Management Studio. It's our strictly online program that anyone from anywhere with an internet connection can be joining. The next iteration is coming to you on October 4th, all the way through December 9th. We do have an in-person product management program where there are 2 iterations left. These are in-person experiences on the Berkeley campus, which means that space is limited. There's only 40 people per session. And it covers a little bit more content than the Product Management Studio. It includes everything that we've talked about, plus a few things, including negotiations. And instead of an 8-week part-time program, these are usually 5 full days that you spend on the Berkeley campus, with upwards to 6 weeks of pre-work associated with it. So some people really like to step away from the work and have the intensive learning opportunity, which is totally a personal preference and can certainly identify with that. Some folks like the online process of getting a drip of information that they can process over a period of time and steadily apply the concepts throughout 8 weeks of time instead. So in person, you get to meet some folks. Online, you have coaches and teams. So those are some key differentiators. And for anybody who is part of the Certificate of Business Excellence program, which is what we call COBE, each of the programs have slightly different credit equivalents as well. For anybody who is interested in the in-person program, I'll go ahead and drop some information about that into the chat now. So if you have any questions that we did not address, and I know we are actually over time at this point, we will try to stay around for a few minutes for additional Q&A for anything that hasn't been covered yet. But if you do have any additional questions, feel free to contact Jen directly at the email listed above. And Jen, if you don't mind throwing that into the chat also, feel free to do that. I'll go ahead and put it in my email in chat as well, so folks can email me if they would like. And yeah, this session is recorded, so if you have anything that you'd like to reference back, feel free to access the recording from the email that we'll be sending you as a follow-up. So let's see, which questions have I missed?
Since I just put Anurshri was asking about time commitment, I just put this slide back up because it has the answer.
Right. Great.
Shivam, the primary case studies that we cover is your business. So you bring a product to the class that you want to work on, and you work on that product and you apply all the things that you're learning in the class to that case. So we don't use the typical Harvard Business School case studies. You are the case study, but then we bring most of the faculty tells sort of smaller stories of application in their sessions. So that the case studies, if you want to call them that, are embedded in the presentations and then in the application to your own project.
So there are a few other questions that came up. We keep a log of questions in the background in operations, so I'll try to address some of these questions if I can, but I will note that we're over time, so if anybody needs to jump off, feel free to do so. We won't be offended. For anybody who's still here, hopefully you asked the question and we're able to address them. Somebody asked whether we can share the faculty names and background for each of the modules. We can certainly do that, and if you email us, so by all means feel free to let us know so that we can get in touch with you. There are not any cohorts starting in mid-December. The next one will actually be in some tentative dates later on in the 2022. I'm going to go copy the dates and plug them in here as well for anybody who's interested in maybe joining us in 2022 rather than 2021.
There's a question about, do we cover biotech products too? The answer is that we have people in the class from all kinds of different products. And so if we don't do examples in the class, you will be applying the materials to your product. You'll have coaches to help you with that application. And we try to match you up with people who are in your product space so you can learn from that as well.
So, Nidhi, this program is not a part of any formal degree program, so there's no university credit associated with it.
And Arthur asked, can anyone be a product manager? And as best I can tell, anyone can be. And that's a little bit a part of what happens in this class, is that people often use it as a springboard to becoming a product manager. The class has a pretty good reputation in industry, so people, when they see it on your LinkedIn, often will take it as a suggestion that you've learned something about product management in that regard. The coaches are also super helpful in helping you think about how to better position yourself for those kinds of jobs. Raul, I would say similar answer to you about the class. We have a whole range of people in the class, from people who want to become PMs to people who have been PMs for some time.
Let's see, Pradeep, if you are able to email us, we'll be able to share some of the in-person program dates with you. I don't have those handy at the moment. To Purnima, for the in-person program, yes, the 6 weeks prior to your sort of residency onto the Berkeley campus is remote. And so you'll be doing about 2 hours of work per week prior to the 5 days on campus, and then you'll be coming to campus on those 5 days and be interacting with everybody there.
And part of what we have you do is do a product management canvas before you get here, so that we can really iterate on it and work with it during that week.
And Shannon, there is a, oh, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Go ahead. No, that's where I was going. So you go there, Vince.
Cool. Yeah, so Shannon, yes, we will be issuing a formal certificate of completion to verify that you have completed the program, and that could be posted on LinkedIn or wherever it is that you would like. You will probably need to run it by your employer to ensure that this is a program that can be reimbursed. Different employers have different requirements for what is sort of considered personal and professional development. And let's see. So Anurshri had a question about how much do you dive into technical aspects and working closely with engineers, writing user stories, basic translating prompt definitions. Those are what we call more tactical components of product management. We do talk about roadmaps a few different times in a strategic way, but we're not necessarily going to offer too much into templates or how to write user stories. Or writing product definitions. So because this is more geared towards executive education and folks who are a little bit more senior. With that said, I mentioned this in chat earlier on when somebody else asked, there are tons of other organizations out there who provide really great educational programs around these sort of aspects. Two that I would personally recommend. One, it's General Assembly, which ironically I used to work for, but they do a pretty good job, I must say. And then subsequently, product management headquarters have some decent content as well.
In fact, we have not a partnership per se with product management headquarters, but we connect people to them from this program. So we think of ourselves as a complementary class to both of the programs that Vince has mentioned.
Right. So yeah, you got the note Pearl from Jen on that answer. I see a lot of questions still. So classes are mostly, so Pradeep, classes for the in-person program are, sorry, the online program is mostly on Thursdays. That said, it a little bit, so the smaller groups, the team and coach oriented sessions do have some flexibility in case other folks might not be available on Thursdays. Generally speaking, they are on Thursdays though, but we do try to group everyone who's in the same time zone with each other. And so you shouldn't have too much trouble trying to make sure that your class is on Thursday if you let your coach know in advance. Cool. I'm a little bit behind, but I think so to Shraddha's point, there is a limit number of enrollments online. We're actually getting quite close to that limit. And so I would highly, highly recommend you start the process of the application. So our new stream, there's some component design strategy associated with this, but I wouldn't necessarily call it strictly design strategy. I think we leverage what is sort of known as design thinking around how to build products. But I would say that this is very much framed towards product management and how that is very strictly applied in product management. I actually also teach in a design strategy program. For those of you who know about the MBA program at California College of the Arts, I teach an innovation class there, and I do believe that the frame is a little bit different here.
I agree.
Let's see, I think we've gotten most of it at this point, and we are 10 minutes over time. And so as we had mentioned before, oh, sorry, Nimish, I'll just answer your one last question here. Is there any post-program support? So in that sense, I'm not entirely sure what you mean, whether it is around sort of career support. There isn't quite any program support post-program, but you retain your relationship with your peers and your coach, and those are relationships that you can continue to carry forward. I myself, as well as Sarah, are usually more than happy to answer questions that any previous participants have about the content or their career. And so while there are no formal programs for post-program support, we are here to help where we can. So as Janice mentioned,
materials are available as long as the platforms we're using, such as Canvas, remain available.
Yep. So Jen has posted her email once again for anybody who still has questions, or maybe we missed it. We try really hard to cover all the questions that we can, but there is a chance that we might have missed something. And so by all means, do not hesitate to email us so that we can address anything that might not have been covered. On behalf of everyone here, as well as everybody in the Product Management Studio program across the board, including coaches and other faculty members, thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of your morning, evening, weekend, whenever it might be for you. And we will hope to see you in the program very soon. Thank you.